today.
Sometimes you have some snarky remarks to when I kind of tease you and stuff, and I think people don't realize that always, because I've had people say, "Oh, you guys were fighting," and it's like, no, we weren't fighting. That Jason is actually always a very pleasant person.
I'm very pleased to hear that we actually fool people sometimes into thinking that we're
Yeah.
having a nice fight.
In fact, I don't think I've ever heard you get mad, raise your voice, or get frustrated at someone.
Well, I'll work harder.
I know you get frustrated with our boss sometimes, but when we're just arguing, different ideas about stuff, but I've never heard you be like, "You son of a man."
No, I don't recall ever getting upset at work. That's the wonderful thing about absolutely loving what we do. I mean, we're so fortunate to be able to do what we love, and we're doing something extremely exciting. So even when we have conversations and disagreements or differing opinions with each other or people in this field, it's still, I don't know. To me, I don't see any point in getting upset or angry at people. I just listen to what they have to say, and I say my piece, and there we go.
Right, yeah. Although, the one who gets probably the most, like, genuinely, we can give some behind the scenes and give them some information. She won't like me probably saying this is Maureen, huh? She gets a little more fiery sometimes.
Well, Maureen is fiery, and she's a woman, and I know that you don't mess with a woman.
Very true. Very true. For any guys out there who are having woman problems, it's probably because you are just fighting too much when you should just chill out and be like, okay, is it that big of a deal? Sit through, watch, the Housewives of New Jersey or something sometimes. You just got to do it.
The rule in retail is the customer is always right, but the rule in life in general is the woman is always right.
Yep, that's the way it goes. All right. Well, a little bit of advice, some romance advice from Jason and I this morning before we get into the business. And the business is we have an interview coming up. And this is one of my favorite people. I think yours too, Jason. Norio Hayakawa.
Yes, love Norio.
Yeah, his name is so fun to say too. Hayakawa is such a cool name. But Norio is really active on his Facebook site, where he is posting stuff all the time. He focuses on research into the alleged Dulce UFO-based triangular UFOs, Area 51, that kind of stuff. Definitely very focused on New Mexico. He's part of New Mexico MUFON. I know he goes to those meetings, and I think he helps out with the Albuquerque chapter. And he is we've talked to him before about some of this stuff, but he's having a conference this weekend called the New Mexico UFO Conference. It's just a day long, kind of a short gig. It's only $20. He's having a few locals and a few not locals. So he's having Michael Schratt, our buddy who used to work with us at Open Minds, has gone on to other things, but still a great researcher. I actually talked to him the other day, Jason, so he's alive and well. But Norio's going to talk about New Mexico UFO culture. Well, he's going to tell us more about what everybody's going to talk about. But Greg Valdez, Travis Walton, and David Marler, some great stuff. So Norio and I are going to talk about this conference and his research in just a little while, so stay tuned for that. But before that, Jason and I are going to talk about some UFOs in the news. So, Big J.
UFOs in the nude.
In the nude.
Oh, you said news.
Yeah,
well,
news.
That's still exciting. It's a little less exciting, but it's still exciting.
Yeah. It seems that when people portray UFOs a lot, especially the real evil ones, they're attractive, nude young women. And I'm talking about the movies, people, so don't get on me for... because you had the one where, like, they were vampires. Remember that one with the naked girl walking around, like, England? It was with the guy who plays Jean-Luc Picard. You remember that?
I don't know what shows you're watching there, buddy.
No, it was it was who plays Jean-Luc Picard?
You know very well, Alejandro.
I can't remember his name right now. You
Patrick
can't either.
Stewart.
Duh, yeah, Patrick Stewart. One of my favorite people. But yeah, he's in this movie. He's a cop, like, chasing down this alien. But then you have the one, was it Natasha Kinski? Is that her name? And then you have this latest one with Scarlett Johansson, where they just kind of use their feminine wiles. And Megan Fox was one. And they kill the guys, so kind of a Black Widow kind of thing.
Movies don't lie, Alejandro. Aliens are sexy.
So, but you're the one who brought up UFOs and nudes. And
I
stuff,
thought you said UFOs in the nude.
Yeah, but actually the news. So, out of this last week, Mr. Jason, what are your top story or stories?
Well, I just want to mention something about the widely known about UFO sighting. The Rendlesham Forest incident, heralded by some as perhaps the best UFO sighting ever. Well, now the Forestry Commission in the UK has decided to commemorate the incident by putting a large metal sculpture depicting a UFO. Now this is pretty cool, Alejandro. I like when these events are actually commemorated. We saw this, what was it, last year with in Australia with the Westall incident. And a couple of years ago there was a marker erected for to commemorate the Betty Barney Hill incident. So UFO tourism is actually a thing, and some places, especially in the UK, are trying to take advantage of it. But I do like that they built this little replica of the ship that was allegedly seen in the forest back in 1980. So I would like to go see this thing.
Yeah, me too. It's really cool, and I'll talk about it more, but I've talked a lot with John Burroughs, one of the witnesses, and he says it's not exactly in the right place, but it's pretty cool, and it's actually a rendition off of what Jim Peniston says he saw, because he said he actually walked up and touched this thing before it flew off. So yeah, pretty cool. An artist did it, and she has, what's funny is I guess some of the markers from the trail, because it's a trail, and when you reach the end of the trail, you see this big art piece on the side of it, and they look weird, but they're not like supposed to be alien writing, even though they kind of look like it, but it's kind of just her artist rendition. But yeah, very cool, and they seem very open to the idea. I mean, they're saying they're not confirming it's alien, but they say we're open to it, and lots of people believe that, and they seem themselves very open to the idea that, you know, this was a genuine mystery.
Yeah, they were careful to state that they're not taking a position with the incident. They're not saying it was aliens, but they're definitely acknowledging that something happened.
Mm-hmm. Pretty cool. Very cool. And this was the week of Rendlesham because, of course, that's why I was in contact with John Burroughs. Because the next day, or no, the same day, we posted that. We posted a story about the UK Ministry of Defence to release 18 more files. And this guy's kind of confusing, so stay with me here, Jason and friends. So the Daily Star wrote a story about 18 more UFO files to be released, and they had a quote from Nick Pope where he's pretty much saying, this is really embarrassing for the MOD. They said they released all the UFO files, and now they haven't. Lots of UFO people or conspiracy people said they were still hiding files, and they turned out to be right. And so very interesting story. So I did some more research to find out, well, where did the Daily Star hear about these files? And on the MOD website, I found a document to a FOIA request that said this person asked for some very specific documents. And the response says, we do have these documents and several others. We're going to release those, but first we have to analyze them and send them over to the National Archives, and that's going to take about 9 months. I assumed the Daily Star had written about this thing on the MOD website, so that's what I put in my story and everything. It turns out John Burroughs, one of the other witnesses, got a hold of me, and he says, "Hey, Alejandro, where did you get that? Because I don't think I sent that to you, and actually they told me months ago they were going to release these files, and that Nick Pope's The Daily Star story was because I sent them information on September 15th about the release of these files and how I'm pursuing more files and some other interesting facts about Rendlesham Forest I figured out." So I looked into it, and we got a response from this guy named Andy Russell who said, "No, that letter's from me from September, and that was the Ministry of Defense responding to me on September 16th. So this is interesting. John Burroughs actually submitted the original FOIA request back in December. And they had told him, yeah, we found 18 files and we're going to release them. He talked about this in Sedona here in Arizona, and a couple people, Larry Lowe and Billy Cox, wrote about him saying that and about those files. And shame on me for not reading their stories, because I didn't even realize this, and we should have, because we try to keep track of everything. So this guy Andy saw those stories, and he did his own request for those files based off of Larry Lowe's story on this, John Burroughs' Sedona talk. And then the MOD responded to him. But coincidentally, John Burroughs sent out his press release to just UK media on the 15th. And then on the 16th, the MOD posts this letter in a response to Andy about the same topic. How weird is that? I mean, are we to believe that's coincidence?
It always could be, but that's one heck of a coincidence.
Yeah, it's hard to think of it. I don't know. I'm having a hard time. Of course, John Burroughs doesn't believe it to be a coincidence, but he thinks the MOD's playing tricks on him and being funky with him. And he has other evidence and has told me these stories about the MOD doing that and doing some weird stuff with him. And he supposedly has uncovered some really cool stuff. But, yeah, how wild is that? The MOD posts on their website about these 18 files the day before John Burroughs sends out his press release. And then the Daily Star next day writes about it. It's kind of like the MOD wanted to preempt the Daily Star story or anybody else writing about it, or maybe even seem like, oh, we're not hiding secrets, this is, we're being public about this, when they really kind of weren't, because they had only, why, when they respond to Burroughs in December or January, not post it until September 16th. It's really strange.
It is. The whole story is strange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what comes out with those files.
Yeah. And then on top of that, in my discussions with Burroughs, he pointed something else out to me that's really cool. That in 2000, the MOD had a report done on UFOs. And Burroughs says this report was essentially their evaluation of UFOs in order to get out of the UFO business. It's something like 21 pages. It's a very long document. You can still go download it on the UK's website, and we have the links to our story. But he points out, and he was shocked to see this, and he was very dismayed with other UFO researchers, namely David Clark, and, he wonders why Nick Pope didn't spot this. This document that evaluates UFOs didn't come out until 2006. At that time, David Clark looked it over. He said there was really nothing new and nothing new about Rendlesham in here. I guess Nick Pope also maybe missed this, but Nick Pope supposedly went over it and didn't find this also. But John Burroughs went through it and was shocked to find there's a section about radiation and UFOs. And there's a part that says the people in Rendlesham Forest, and they call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, And John Burroughs thinks they changed their name from UFO to UAP so people putting FOIA requests for UFOs wouldn't get the UAP stuff. Another interesting thing where it could be some tricks being played by the MOD. But
and they've admitted to playing tricks in the past, so wouldn't be too surprising.
Exactly. So this says, that the Rendlesham Forest guys had seen a UFO for a period of time, so they could have been exposed to UAP radiation for a long period of time. And now Burroughs is sick. He has heart problems. So is Peniston. And they've been trying to get their medical records from this period of time. And the military their records have been screwed up. So Burroughs, for instance, didn't even show he was in the military for this period of time. When he was, he had to go to his senator out here, John McCain. He was living in Arizona at the time. They said, we were able to get your records fixed to now you show you were in service from 79 on, which he was, but we'll probably never be able to get your military medical records from that time period. Really strange stuff. I mean, talk about conspiracy stuff. Why would these two guys have their medical records missing from this period of time? It's really weird, crazy story.
And that's for me, one of the more interesting elements to the entire Rendlesham story. Because to me, that does indicate that there's something there that somebody doesn't want anybody to find. But this whole thing paints a bigger picture of, just fuel for conspiracy theorists. They don't give any reason, to dissuade any of these conspiracies unless they intentionally want conspiracies going, but it's like they fuel the fire intentionally.
Exactly.
There's so much there, and it's so bizarre.
Exactly. I mean, you think they'd be more careful if they're trying to suppress this idea that there's a big conspiracy, but I mean, all of this does smack for some sort of cover-up going on. So it's very strange. Burroughs says he's found a lot more information that he's still gathering and that he'll give us, and we'll help release it. I figured we'd just try to tackle this in bite-sized pieces because it's all very complicated. But really, people, you got to go check out this it's called UK Defense Intelligence suggests witnesses may have been exposed to UFO radiation. That's the story. So come and get up to date on this. And, I think we all need to support John Burroughs in his efforts. And I've got to say, I was really impressed with the work that Burroughs has done so far, learning how to do FOIAs and doing all of this research, going to McCain. He's done a lot of great stuff. And some of this is outlined in the book, the recent book that Nick Pope wrote that with him and Peniston. But there's only a little bit, so he feels that, more of the story needs to be told. And I told him we're certainly more than happy to cover it and write about it. So really, really interesting stuff. I think this is going to be an important story going forward.
I think it's man, why all of a sudden is there all of this news about Rendlesham?
Yeah, that's another weird thing, huh?
Just popped out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's coincidentally, the same day you have the story or a couple days you have the story about the art piece going up, then you have the files being posted on the MOD website and the story and the press conference thing going out. It is strange.
Didn't they just have a conference over there too?
Yeah, really good point, because that had to do, the original press release was released by the conference on September 15th, and they have a press release that outlines this, and it went out to the media, and they put it on their website. However, John Burroughs included that press release and a whole press kit that he sent to the UK newspapers, and he also sent it to us, and that's where I was able to get more of this information. But so they had, all the papers had a lot of information, and it's really, I think, disappointing of the Daily Star that all they did was really say there's going to be more files out. They used these quotes from Nick Pope, which are great quotes. But they didn't write about all this other stuff, which is really also very interesting. They didn't mention anything about Burroughs having problems getting his medical records. I mean, that's a big deal, I would think.
Well, the Daily Star isn't known for its quality reporting.
Oh, no, you didn't.
No, I didn't say anything.
Yeah, they're kind of a tabloid type of paper, which is very popular in the UK. Yeah, so really good stuff. And then I want to ask you about one more, Jason, if you would humor me for a minute. This story about this UFO swerving out of the way, or this airplane swerving out of the way of a UFO. What do you make of this whole thing?
The drunk pilot.
Aha.
No, I don't think there's anything terribly crazy about this. Yes, it's a bizarre airplane contrail that, for whatever reason, seems to deviate from its flight path and it's swerved over. The odd thing is that, you know, the paper that covered this story talked to the photographer, Florence Lehman, a school teacher, and, you know, based on the comments from this person, they said they heard from somebody else that the plane was actually seen swerving, and other people said they saw a UFO, but we don't have any testimony from those people who apparently actually saw something. We just have the woman who photographed the contrail. So there's lots of hearsay testimony there. We don't know what actually happened.
Right. So, and another possibility, something that was suggested, is wind currents taking that particular spot. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's possible?
I don't really think that's possible with that trail to stay intact as much as it appears to in the photo. Mm-hmm. Because when wind does disperse a contrail, it spreads out. And, you know, that seems very specific to that one area, and the trail itself doesn't seem to dissipate at all. So I don't really think wind would do that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in air patterns and what they can do. So.
Yeah. Yep, I gotcha. Yeah, so interesting stuff. People will have to check that out. But it's, definitely an interesting picture. So I wanted to see what you thought of that.
Yeah, you know, I would think something more mysterious with it, or think it was worthy of more discussion if we did, in fact, have more details from people who actually observed it, rather than just somebody who took a photo of a weird contrail.
All right. Right-ho. All right. Well, thank you very much once again for joining me for the news, Mr. Jason McClellan.
Join us again next time for UFOs in the Nude.
Well, we could tell people that we're doing UFOs in the nude right now, and no one would know.
But then nobody would listen. Even though it's just radio, that's still disturbing.
Yeah, that's true. Because then you get that in your mind.
That's right. And nobody wants to see us in the nude.
Well, some people do. Our women do, I hope. Yours does.
No, nobody wants to see me in the nude.
Oh, that's sad. All right. Okay, so we'll talk to you next week, Jason. Why don't we now talk with Mr. Norio Hayakawa?
I am very excited to welcome back to the show Norio Hayakawa. Hello there.
Hello, Alejandro. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, very fine and very excited about the upcoming event right here in New Mexico.
Oh, my gosh. I am too. And I was planning on going, to be honest. And I was, and then I was talking to, you know how girlfriends always have to burst the bubble. My girlfriend the other day, and she was like, well, that's the weekend we already have planned. We're going camping with, the Phoenix MUFON, because they have a camping event every year. And I'm like, oh no, I thought that was the different weekend. So I was going to drive out there and check it out because you have some great speakers. And
yes, that's true. And the weather's fine.
I hope that everybody else goes.
Yes, I hope so too, because this is the first time ever right here in the city of Rio Rancho, which is the largest growing city in New Mexico, and it's right next to Albuquerque. But this is the first time ever for this city to have a UFO conference, and the title is actually called the New Mexico UFO Conference, and to my knowledge, there has never been a New Mexico UFO conference before.
Mm-hmm. And it's a one-day conference on Saturday, October 4th, is that correct?
That's correct. Saturday, October 4th from 1:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And this conference is going to be held on the opening day of the famous balloon fiesta of Albuquerque.
Mm-hmm. I used to go to that every year. My mom lived in Albuquerque for a while, and that was the other reason I wanted to make it this weekend, because the balloon fiesta is absolutely amazing.
Oh, yes, it is absolutely amazing. And the balloon fiesta actually starts out early in the morning. It's early morning event, basically, when the balloons start, flying. But during the daytime, it's very quiet and not much activity until the evening when they have this night glow and so on. But during the daytime, nothing to do. So this is the reason why we're having this conference, so that people who come to Balloon Fiesta will have something to do and find out about this conference. They might stop by.
Right, yeah, and that's a good point in that, you get your double bang for your buck going out there for the Balloon Fiesta, which I believe is the largest in the world, right?
It is the largest balloon event in the world, I believe.
Yeah, they launched something like 1,000 hot air balloons. I remember the numbers around there in the air at once, and of course, it's amazing because you get to walk the fairgrounds as they're launching these things, and each of the balloons is huge. I mean, they're all very big, and they launch them, and it fills the sky, and all these people floating around up there. It's an incredible thing.
It's amazing, and they come in all different kinds of shapes imaginable, such as Star Wars, that shape.
Yeah.
All kinds. But I have yet to see a flying saucer shape yet.
Yeah, there's an alien one.
Yeah, there are alien ones, yes. I would like to have a flying saucer one soon.
Yeah. So, who are you having at your conference?
Well, actually, we are having 5 speakers, including myself. And we have Michael Schratt, who will talk about man-made UFOs and the America's black budget programs. And then we have Greg Valdez, who is the son of the late Gabe Valdez, whom you interviewed in a historic interview a few years ago, I think in 2011, before he passed away. In fact, a week before he passed away, you interviewed him.
Right, yeah, and I mean, I think what happened too is I had him on, and then I had you on, because you were able to arrange that for me, and yeah, unfortunately, he passed away soon after.
Yes, and we're so happy to have Greg Valdez take over the research that his father has done all the years about Dulce, and Greg Valdez carries on his father's legacy, and he published a book recently called The Dulce Base, and he'll talk about this amazing subject, the Dulce Base. And then, of course, we have David Marler, who lives right here in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. He is the author of this book called Triangular UFOs, a very interesting subject. And then to finally, top it off all, we have Travis Walton from Arizona who will talk about his unusual experience. It's whether one believes it or not, he claims that the experience is real, and it's probably real. And who are we to, deny his experience? And because we really don't know what reality is anyway. So this is a very interesting conference, a whole spectrum of ideas, And that's why we want to explore this. And especially doing things like this in New Mexico is very important because, New Mexico has an amazing UFO history and culture. No question about it.
And that's going to be your topic.
That is my topic. It's about the amazing UFO history and culture of New Mexico, which is one of the most unique states insofar as the history of UFOs are concerned. And, even today, New Mexico is considered to be a state that continues to have a lot of sighting reports.
And, well, do you have a sense as to why?
Well, actually, New Mexico is a huge state. It's the fifth largest state in the Union with a population of only 2 million in the entire state. And so it has a tremendous space, the vast space for, first of all, for a government to conduct any kind of a experiment or any kind of secret projects. And of course, this would be the most ideal state in the United States for any kind of outside possible intelligence. If they were to find out about Earth, New Mexico is probably the first place they would look for because it has the most advanced military research development programs ever since 1945 and earlier, because this is the first state in which the nuclear explosion took place and tested, and after World War II, many other tests of different kinds were conducted, and so this would be an ideal place for those entities. If they were to be here, this would be the first place they would come. Not that I'm saying that they are here or something like that, but I'm just saying that this would be an ideal location.
Yeah, it would make sense, and especially if like many people, of course, Robert Hastings is kind of the pioneer in the field of UFOs and nukes. If there really is, something to extraterrestrials being interested in our nuclear abilities, then it would make sense that they would be there in New Mexico, like you said, where it all started. And I think they still dismantle nuclear warheads at Kirtland Air Force Base there in Albuquerque. Is that, or in the Manzano area?
Yes, they actually it's under Kirtland Air Force Base now, but both the Manzano base, which had the underground nuclear storage facility, is continuing on in another part of Kirtland Air Force Base underground. And they are definitely storing many of the sensitive materials even today. And so, insofar as nuclear materials, Albuquerque's Kirtland Air Force Base is very, very significant and important. And what's interesting in all of this, Alejandro, is that it all started in 1947. The very same year that a lot of things started happening.
Yeah, it's strange. What are your thoughts about 1947 and all the important things that seem to have begun in that year? Exactly.
As I said, actually the Sandia National Laboratories, which is one of the largest defense contracting corporation or organization, started in 1947 right here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the Kirtland Air Force Base became the Air Force Base in 1947. It was just a Army airfield until then. And then, of course, 1947 was the very same year that the CIA was established, as well as NSA, the National Security Act, passed in 1947. So there you have the strange coincidences regarding 1947. And over in Nevada, in 1947, actually, the EG&G Corporation, which is the first contractor to land itself as contracting service at Area 51. They started in 1947, even though Area 51 actually began in 1955. It's interesting that the EG&G Corporation also started in 1947.
Wow. It almost makes now, I know, and we'll get into this, that you're would be considered a conservative researcher, which is something I very much appreciate. But when you think of 1947, and I was thinking UFO wise, but other important things like you mentioned, but you've just mentioned some more I didn't even realize. It almost makes you think of metaphysical kind of answers. Why, 1947 seemed awfully special, like the stars were aligned in the correct way or something going on there.
Well, it's a good question. As everybody knows, in 1947, you had this incident at Roswell, which we still don't know what the real truth about at Roswell is, And then, of course, in 1947, not only Roswell, but other locations in New Mexico had strange incidents of something crashing. And, for example, on July 3rd, 1947, an object crashed outside of Magdalena and Datil, which is right near the VLA, Very Large Array Complex. It's in the plains of San Agustin. And this crash of an object on the plains of San Agustin took place in 1947 on July 3rd, and it's very significant. And speaking about New Mexico, yes, in August of 1945, believe it or not, a strange object crashed outside of a small town called San Antonio, New Mexico, which is just south of Socorro. And it was witnessed by a few people there. And so people think that, when it comes to UFOs, New Mexico is just Roswell, but it's not true. There's more to New Mexico's UFO history than just Roswell. In fact, there are more interesting and important incidents in New Mexico, such as, for example, in 1950, in a small town of Farmington in northwest New Mexico, for 3 days in a row, Alejandro, every day around noontime, hundreds of Farmington residents witnessed hundreds of silver disc-shaped objects maneuvering in the sky over their town. And this is just one of the most amazing mass UFO sightings ever in the history of UFO in America.
Yeah. I know that's one that David Marler's really interested. He sent me a life-size clipping of the newspaper just recently. But yeah, because there was at least one picture, but I think it was unknown who took it, that resulted out of that. And it's a pretty amazing picture.
It is an amazing picture, and it's black and white. And, of course, that was 1950. And in my opinion, it's a very, very important picture. And I'm glad, Alejandro, because I understand that it was through you that that picture came about.
Well, it was actually a Wendell Stevens picture, so he gets all the credit. But yeah, we have his record, so I scanned that, and we've got it in our magazine, and I got one for David, and I think we have it online too. I think we have a video about it actually as well, talking about that sighting. Because yeah, that's a great sighting.
Yes, and so we don't know what really happened, but we're talking about hundreds, up to 500 disc-shaped objects maneuvering over Farmington during the daytime. And this is just hard to imagine, but it happened. It occupied the front page newspaper of Farmington Daily Times, and then also it was reported in the LA Times in a small article. So it's a verifiable incident, and there are many witnesses even today, but as David Marler said to me, we must go to these witnesses because, if we don't get these testimonies, they'll be dying pretty soon because they are, already in old age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's very important to get all these documentations.
Yep. So talking about a little bit about you for people who aren't aware, like how long have you been studying this field? For a long time, right?
Oh, yes. For a long time, Alejandro, I started actually in 1961.
Wow.
And I was just, just a grade school, 7th or 8th grade student. And so that was in 1961. Then I went to high school, and then I started subscribing to some newsletters from APRO and NICAP, National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena in Washington, D.C. And so I became interested, and but really what really catapulted me to ufology is the incident that happened on April 24th of 1964 in a small town of Socorro, as I mentioned, in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Very famous Lonnie Zamora Socorro incident of 1964. And I heard about that incident strangely in Japan when I was living there.
Wow.
I grew up there in Japan, and I was in a college over there when one day I opened up the English newspaper, Japanese edition, and on the third page there was an article saying that policeman sees saucer sitting on sand. That was the title. And it was from a small town called Socorro, which I never heard before. And it said that the patrol officer witnessed this strange oval-shaped object landing, or actually it was already landed, in the desert. And he stopped chasing a high-speed chasing car, and he went to the desert because he found he listened to this explosion in the desert. And when he went to the desert area, he saw this silver oval-shaped object with insignia and with tripod just sitting there about 350 feet, away from him. And this was a very, very well-documented incident of April 1964. Exact date was April 24th. And it was investigated immediately by people like J. Allen Hynek and others. And they claimed that this is an authentic incident, verified and, approved by the Air Force as authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's interesting thing about this incident was, of course, the Lonnie Zamora's, testimony of seeing this insignia on the oval-shaped object, and two entities dressed in some kind of white coveralls. Mm-hmm. And what's more interesting is that Lonnie Zamora never described them as out of the ordinary. He just described them as normal looking.
Yeah.
He never said they were aliens or anything like that. He said they were just normal looking, except they were small in stature, mm-hmm. but wearing white coveralls. And so this is just a fascinating thing that still remains as one of the most credible incidents.
Mm-hmm. I think Hector Quintanilla, who was a real skeptic, the head of Blue Book at the time, said this was the one case, I think, didn't he say that he felt had some merit?
Exactly. And so most of the, at that time, Blue Book people and, the Air Force, they came, I would say about 15 to 20 personnel came. That's related to the investigation, and put an official stamp approving that this was an authentic incident. And but one thing interesting is that on April 24, 1964, there is also a rumor, this is not verified, but at Holloman Air Force Base, which is south of White Sands Missile Range, about 200 miles south of Socorro. There was supposed to have been some kind of a landing of an object in the Holloman Air Force Base on the very same day, April 24, 1964. But, this is not really fully documented, but, it's, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but it's interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I think that Doty, I know, has said, Richard Doty, who, worked for Air Force and has lots of crazy stories, said that the Zamora UFO had landed in the wrong spot. They got their directions off, and they were supposed to land in Holloman. I know that's one of his stories, and they got their directions mixed up or something.
Well, that is, as I said, there's so many strange stories coming up.
Have you heard the recent story, and it looked pretty credible, about the insignia on the side of the craft? Where the one that was released early on was not the correct one, and the reason is they wanted anybody who said they saw the UFO, they wanted to ask them, well, what did this insignia look like, to check if they got the right one or not.
Very interesting, yes. Yeah. There could be a lot of interpretations of that insignia, and so the question is, did he see something extraterrestrial, or did he see something that was made by the government? And that's the big question.
Yeah.
Still remain even today.
And it seems to be a big question, kind of the main question that you tackle in your research.
That's correct, because I try to have my 2 feet on the ground when it comes to UFOs, and there's no question that the government has a lot of technologies that would surprise us. And, this is the reason why I respect researchers like the late Gabe Valdez, who investigated a lot of cattle mutilations and UFO sightings in Dulce, New Mexico in the mid-70s and 80s. And he came to the conclusion that it's possible that the government may have experimented in remotely controlled platforms that look like flying saucers, and also may have used some kind of a technology of some kind of a holographic projection technology to create some kind of a UFO incident or series of incidents in the Dulce area. Which is very, very fascinating to begin with, because the Dulce area has a very unique, strange history too, because it was only in 1967 that the government exploded a nuclear device underground, just about 22 miles southwest of Dulce, on December 10th, 1967, and it was called Project Gas Buggy. And the idea was to ease the flow of natural gas trapped deep underground in that area, so they would benefit that area, But it seems like radiation leaked out little by little, and may have affected some animals and even humans in that area. So Gabe Valdez believed that the government may have clandestinely monitored radiation levels of some of these cows in particular that were affected. So it's a very interesting theory that the government may have created or staged some kind of an alien-related scenario by use of technologies. And, actually, Gabe Valdez was one of the first persons that said that possibly Sandia Laboratories, and by the late 1970s, may have had some kind of prototype of UAV or unmanned aerial vehicles that resembled like flying saucers.
Yeah, I found it so really interesting when I talked to him that he works with so many paranormal researchers, cattle mutilation researchers, ufologists, and is friendly with everyone. But he was pretty certain that that there are no extraterrestrials visiting this planet, that it is all man-made. And it's interesting coming from someone in law enforcement who lived in that area. I think you can argue, and I think Chris O'Brien makes this argument, that that's where the most cattle mutilations have happened, and he's been close to it. So it's interesting he should say that and feel that way.
That's correct. But of course, on the other hand, there are many other incidences throughout the world, such as in South America, in Argentina, that had a lot of cattle mutilations that are unexplained. So, it's still unresolved, basically. Yeah. But one thing I can say, Alejandro, is that New Mexico is very important in the sense that the many German scientists and engineers came here to New Mexico right after World War II, because the United States government brought them from Germany to give us some of their so-called black technologies that they used to develop in the 1930s and 1940s, and such as the flying wing aircraft and then of course rocketry and all other stuff. So it's very interesting that the German scientists, through the Operation Paperclip, became a very essential part of the development of America's black budget programs, including, not only weapon systems, but other researches. For example, many of the German scientists were sent to Los Alamos National Laboratories to conduct research on genetics and so on. And then other scientists went south to White Sands to begin testing rockets, and then also other prototypes of some kind of aircraft, probably flying wing aircraft and others. So it's very significant, the German presence after World War II in New Mexico.
Yeah. So, and I know at your conference, Michael Stroud will be talking a lot about those craft, and of course, Greg Valdez about Dulce. But, you being a more conservative or skeptical investigator, you do have, David Marler and Travis Walton. David Marler, who I think is a great, very careful investigator. And what do you think of his findings? Because he has found that the triangular UFO sightings go back into the past further than I think anybody had realized, certainly further than I had realized. And that, the human answer to that question, at least to completely answer that question, is, in his mind, because they go back, harder to explain, all of those sightings.
That's right. A lot of people have the notion that the triangular UFOs started, being reported in the late 70s and so on. But according to his research, it goes as old as the late 1800s. And maybe even earlier. So this is one subject that is perplexing, and it even goes to this day. So I think he's a very unique person that concentrated specifically on triangular UFOs. And of course, triangular UFOs vary so much in size. It goes from smaller ones to extremely humongous ones, like 3 times the size of football field, which is very, very difficult for us to comprehend. How an object that 4 times the size of football field can actually hover or just go very slowly without dropping. And so, according to our present knowledge of propulsion systems, most scientists and engineers would say that's an impossibility. So, on the other hand, the reports come quite often, so we have to take a good look and not come to any conclusions, but, this is something that we must deal with, something that we cannot hastily come to any conclusion.
So I want to ask you another question, something I asked him, and I thought his answer was interesting, and it was, And I think it sounds right on. The idea, what are your ideas behind the existence of the TR3B?
Well, actually, this idea of TR3B, to me, it has been misdirected. In other words, this idea basically started with Mr. Edgar Fouché, and but actually, the most credible information is really not TR3B, but TR3A, which the Aviation Week and Space Technology mentioned that in the 1990s. And yes, TR3A is considered to be more credible information rather than the TR3B.
Right.
Because that's my opinion, and there's no real mention of TR3B anywhere that I know of in the documentations of the Air Force and other, aviation, military aviation publications.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of TR, 3A.
I totally agree with you, and the TR3A. While a kind of a stealth plane, a flying wing triangular craft was nothing too abnormal. I think it was a proof of technology kind of craft. But it nothing like what people describe as this TR3B, which, when Marler looked into it, he didn't find much evidence either. He found exactly what you just kind of outlined, and when I've looked into it, I've found the same. So it's an interesting mythology, this TR3B that started up.
Exactly, and it's the kind of very strange looking, because most artists' rendition of TR3B describes the object as a very thick, it's very thick, too thick, and it has 3 lights supposedly on each end of the triangle, the angles, and of course it resembles the photograph of the Belgium UFO sightings of the 1990s, but the honest opinion of mine is that so far, we have not seen any single credible documented photo of any triangular UFOs, and that's a very strange thing to me. That even the Belgium famous photo of the triangular UFO or craft that was taken by a person in Belgium was proven to be a hoax.
Right. Sadly.
So that was a big disappointment to me, and despite the lots of reports of the 1990 wave of triangular objects in Belgium, we still haven't come up with any definitive, credible, fully documented photograph. And that's the one thing that is still mysterious to me.
Right. Speaking of mysterious, I want to get your feelings. Obviously, I think you must feel that the Walton case is a credible one, but being a more skeptical or researcher, and I feel similar, at least for me, I guess I could share how I feel and see if you feel similarly, is that I really, I've become friends with Travis. He's out here in Arizona. I see him often. We hang out when we're at conferences and stuff. And I've never seen him falter in the story. It seems so credible. I really, for me, nothing's 100%. Absolutely nothing. But he's right up there too, I really believe the story and his experiences, and to say that means that you believe some really wild stuff. So, how does it make you feel?
Well, as I said many times in the past, we still don't know really if the image that we see or experience is real or not, because I have found out that the the military has been working for many years, at least 30 years, especially the Naval Research Laboratories and so on. They have experimented for many years in psychological operations and also in inducing a picture or experience to an observer, including the experience of some kind of abduction cases. And this is a fact because even Dr. Jacques Vallée mentioned that in 1975, the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory did some experiments in Brazilian jungles involving indigenous people over there in the Amazon area. And the U.S. government, the research laboratory, actually used different kinds of helicopters and different kinds of equipment for mind control. And they did some experiments with the indigenous people in the jungle and created a scenario whereby these indigenous people were absolutely convinced that they were taken inside some kind of a space vehicle and was examined and then released. And so this is what I mean, that the experience that people, the abductee claim could be real, but whether that reality was induced or created by an outside force for some kind of a reason. It's very interesting, and that's why in this conference, New Mexico UFO conference, most of the speakers, like myself, Michael Shad, Greg Valdez, and David Marler, accept that it's possible that many of these UFOs are man-made technologies. But on the other hand, we invited Travis Walton because he is very unique. He is one of the most credible people as far as the abduction account is concerned, and he has never changed his story for many, many years, as you said. So we're talking about a real incident that is reality to him. But the big question is, what is that reality? Is that the same reality as we understand, or it was some kind of an induced reality,
Well, but getting to that, that's what's great about his case also, is that there were other witnesses. So would you infer then that they were induced as well, or perhaps he was taken, and then the inducing happened?
Well, it's a big question. Yes, as you said, this case is unique because it was reportedly witnessed by his wood cutting colleagues, and so that's what makes this case a very fascinating case. So we still don't know what really happened, and that's why we must continue to find out more about these type of things, but abduction itself is definitely, to me, a personal incident, a personal experience, and not, multiple person experience. But in this case, this incident was witnessed by the other woodcutters. So that's very interesting. Whether we have a technology now to create this kind of a thing, for some kind of a psychological experiment, we don't know yet.
Yeah. You know what? It'd be great if you could come to our UFO Congress this year, because we're going to have a couple guys part of the Allagash abduction case from the 70s, and really, I think this case ranks up there with Travis's, because one of the great things about Travis is meeting him. He's so down to earth, he's such a level-headed guy. You get to talk to him about stuff. And so are these Allagash guys. They're just, salt of the earth, regular guys. And that's what's always cool, because sometimes you meet some of these people and they are lecturers, they're performers, they're out there doing their thing. And you don't get the sense that they're just kind of a regular, down to earth a guy like you do with Travis. And so that's one great thing about Travis, and I'm really excited about having the Allagash guys at our conference too. I don't know if you've met them.
No, I haven't met them, but I'm definitely interested. But regardless, we're talking about this phenomenon, which is still remains in the mystery. So, on the other hand, yes, we may have technologies to simulate some of these incidents, but on the other hand, there are so many cases where we have no answers. You see, that's why this whole UFO phenomenon continues to occupy one of the mysteries of this world.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's great. And I do love, and I know some people get frustrated, but when a more mundane conclusion is offered or possibility is offered, and I've certainly seen on your website or on your Facebook where people have gotten frustrated with you. How do you deal with that?
Well, I just deal with that as, I'm used to it because, as I said, I am not a debunker of anything because who am I to debunk anything, because these things, this phenomenon is real, except that we don't know what they are. We have no definitive proof that they are physical extraterrestrial entities with physical extraterrestrial craft, or they may not possibly be just physical, or maybe not physical at all, because as Dr. Jacques Vallée said many years ago, the UFOs may not actually be flying, nor are they possibly objects. So it's very interesting, and that's why we continue to have this topic, because this is one of the most important topics that you can ever think of, and that's why I'm so glad to have this New Mexico UFO conference, and my hat's off to the mayor of Rio Rancho. The mayor of Rio Rancho declared October 4th as the official UFO Research Day.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's going to be in the newspaper on Sunday, I believe, because he has the guts to claim, and he's the mayor, that this is going to be an important day. And he didn't mention anything about aliens or nothing. He just said that this is a UFO Research Day. That means it's a very serious thing.
That is so cool. That is really, really cool. Well, I know you have to run. Thank you for coming on the show. People can know more about the conference. They can go to nmufoconference.com to find out more. Of course, you can also look for Norio Hayakawa on Facebook. And I just want to say, I love your stuff. I love following you on Facebook, and I love your grounded approach to things. So thanks again for being on the show. And I wish I could make the conference. And really, people, you got to get out there. It's only $20.
That's right. And one of these days I will attend your conference in Arizona.
Okay, in February. You got to
Thank you so much, Alejandro, for your work.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. Thanks for following it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Norio has some really interesting stuff, and you've got to go to his Facebook and check out his news. He always comes up with some really interesting stuff. So you can go look for Norio Hayakawa. And of course, if you go to my Facebook, Alejandro Rojas, you will find he is one of my friends if you're looking for it. Sometimes it gets hard to find people, but there's probably not too many Norio Hayakawa, so it probably won't be too difficult to find him. So check that out. And if you want to read more about his conference, it's nmufoconference.com. If you're in the New Mexico area, you've got to check it out. I would be there, but I'm going to go camping with the Phoenix, Arizona MUFON this weekend. So I had prior engagements, or I'd be driving to Albuquerque. I love Albuquerque anyway to go check out this conference. So go check it out, people. Also, I want to mention a couple things before I let you go. First of all, I haven't mentioned this in a while, but it keeps growing. We have this really cool UFO video portal. If you go to openminds.tv, you'll see a link video portal. You'll also see a graphic in the upper right. And what we're doing is posting all of the lectures and some other things, but mostly the lectures from the International UFO Congresses in the past. And some of these talks are incredible. So we have like A.J. Geviard from Brazil. We have Antonio Huneeus talking about UFOs of the 21st century. We have Carol Rosen, who used to work for Werner von Braun, the rocket scientist, Francis Barwood, who was on the city council in Phoenix during the Phoenix Lights and investigated the Phoenix Lights. So a lot of really cool stuff, and plus some of the regulars that you've heard about, Jim Mars. We also have Lloyd Pye talking about the Star Child skull, and unfortunately he passed away in the last year, so you'll be able to see more about that. So we have lots of videos, and we have more going up every month. It's only like $6 a month to join, and you can have access to all the videos you want, watch them all the time over and over again, and you have more videos popping up all the time. Or you can watch them each for a smaller amount or for just a couple bucks. But yeah, really cool. You got to check out the video portal. And of course, check out Spacing Out. We had a new episode on Friday where we talked about in depth about some of this news we talked about here, but we talked about more than just this. And Jason, of course, has his piece on there where he talked about he's debunking UFO sightings largely lately, but in a very interesting way. And it's good to know when there's hoaxes and stuff. So, but he does a really cool piece on Spacing Out. So check that out on our YouTube channel, but you can also see it on openminds.tv. And then, of course, you want to register for the UFO Congress. We're so excited. I think I mentioned it. Well, I talked to Norio about it, but I'm just so excited about the Allagash guys. I know a lot of you like Travis Walton, and so do I. Travis Walton's awesome. Oh, and yeah, and I talked about Travis Walton's Skyfire conference coming up in early November. We're going to go out to a Skywatch at the location where Travis was taken, and so that's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to interview some of the witnesses. We'll have a video up, but you can go to that if you want. Go look up Skyfire Conference. But the reason I'm mentioning Travis Walton's case is because it's an incredible case with multiple witnesses. And meeting Travis, he's such a down-to-earth guy. Well, these Allagash guys in the 70s had a similar experience where they were all taken. They were all went under hypnotic regression separately, but remember similar things. The creatures look similar. Amazing case. And when you meet these guys, they are so cool and so down to earth. You're regular Joes, and they're going to be at the UFO Congress this year. And I'm just really excited about this because this case is just so incredible. And not a lot of people know about the Allagash case this year. And I think it's as big of a deal as a Travis Walton case. And it's great when you can actually talk to the witnesses. So really cool case, and we're going to have them there, among other really cool, incredible speakers that you got to check out. So February 18th to the 22nd, go register for that. And as always, I like to tell people, go reserve your rooms now because they go really quick at the host hotel. But luckily, if you don't get at the host hotel, there's a couple nearby ones. And last year, they all sold out. And I'm sure they will this year, too, because we're getting a lot of registrations. So join in the fun. It should be awesome. And soon here, we're probably going to have, some other announcements of some other really cool speakers as we finalize our list of speakers here. So I hope you join us. Thank you so much for listening and being here again. I want to thank Caleb Hanks, who does our opening and close music. You can find his music at UFO, or I always say UFO, but it's supposed to be the Clerk Chronicles.com. He does some great music, so thank you to Caleb. And of course, thank you all for being here week after week. We really love it that you join us, and we're so happy to hear from you when you tell us that you like the show. We work really hard to bring you some really cool stuff, and we have cool stuff coming up. We're going to have some regarding Rendlesham. We're going to talk to someone next week you haven't heard from, nor has anybody